As she entered the house, she found her younger sister Joyce waiting at the foot of the stairs, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Sister Grace, I need to tell you something," Joyce began, her voice low and hesitant. Grace frowned, slipping off her heels. "What is it, Joyce? What happened?" Joyce glanced over her shoulder, ensuring no one was listening. "It's Zara and Annabel. I was preparing lunch when I heard noises coming from Annabel's room. When I went to check, I saw them naked. Zara ran out when I opened the door." Grace's chest tightened, her breath catching as the words sank in. "Are you sure? They're only 9 years old, Joyce. This doesn't make sense." "I'm not lying," Joyce replied firmly. "I know what I saw." Grace's legs wobbled as she sank onto the staircase. Her daughters had always been close, inseparable since birth. But this? It was unthinkable. Grace had always been a pillar of strength, a mother, wife, and a thriving textile trader in the bustling city of Kano, Nigeria. Her shop at the city's vibrant market was her pride and joy, but it often left her drained. Between haggling with customers and dealing with the chaotic streets, her days felt like a never-ending whirlwind. Yet something felt off that evening. The air carried an unsettling stillness that gnawed at her instincts, prompting her to head home earlier than usual. The compound, usually alive with the hum of generators and children's laughter, was eerily silent as she pushed open the rusted gate. Grace's heels clicked softly against the pavement as she stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning for her twin daughters, Zara and Annabel. As she entered the house, she found her younger sister Joyce waiting at the foot of the stairs, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Sister Grace, I need to tell you something," Joyce began, her voice low and hesitant. Grace frowned, slipping off her heels. "What is it, Joyce? What happened?" Joyce glanced over her shoulder, ensuring no one was listening. "It's Zara and Annabel. I was preparing lunch when I heard noises coming from Annabel's room. When I went to check, I saw them naked. Zara ran out when I opened the door." Grace's chest tightened, her breath catching as the words sank in. "Are you sure? They're only 9 years old, Joyce. This doesn't make sense." "I'm not lying," Joyce replied firmly. "I know what I saw." Grace's legs wobbled as she sank onto the staircase. Her daughters had always been close, inseparable since birth. But this? It was unthinkable. Steeling herself, she climbed the stairs and found the twins seated on the couch. Their innocent faces lit up as they saw her, running to hug her. "Zara, Annabel," Grace said gently but firmly. "Auntie Joyce told me something happened today. I need you to tell me the truth." The twins exchanged confused glances. "What did she say?" Annabel asked cautiously. "She said you were naked in your room together," Grace replied. The room fell silent. Zara shook her head vigorously. "That's not true, Mama. We didn't do anything." "Yes, Mama," Annabel chimed in. "Auntie Joyce is lying." Their conviction left Grace conflicted. Joyce wasn't the type to fabricate stories, but the twins' innocent faces made her doubt everything. That night, sleep eluded her. What if something deeper was going on? Weeks passed, and life seemed to return to normal. Yet, an unsettling feeling lingered in Grace's heart. One afternoon, while organizing Zara's wardrobe, she stumbled upon something that sent her mind racing, a dildo hidden among Zara's neatly folded clothes. Her breath caught as she pulled it out, her heart pounding with disbelief. "Zara!" she called, her voice sharp and filled with urgency. Zara appeared hesitantly at the door. "Yes, Mama?" she asked, her voice cautious. Holding up the dildo, Grace's eyes narrowed. "What is this doing in your wardrobe?" she demanded. "I don't know, Mama," Zara stammered, her face flushing. "Maybe Auntie Joyce put it there by mistake." Grace studied her daughter's face, searching for the truth, but her gut told her there was more to the story. The uneasy shadow over their home suddenly felt heavier than ever. Grace's stomach churned. Her husband Brian dismissed her concerns, calling them baseless, but the unease wouldn't leave her. She decided to take matters into her own hands. Grace had always trusted her husband Brian, but lately, something felt off. It started with subtle changes, his sudden late-night meetings, the distant look in his eyes, and the odd way he seemed distracted at home. Her instincts told her something wasn't right. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Without informing anyone, she installed discreet cameras that covered every corner of their home. She told herself it was for her peace of mind, to ensure her children were safe and everything was as it should be. Days passed and life carried on as usual. Grace reviewed the footage in private, watching for anything out of place. Most of the time, everything seemed normal, until one day. That afternoon, Grace returned home earlier than expected, her heart heavy with a mix of curiosity and dread. As she entered the house, it was unusually quiet. She set her bag down and climbed the stairs, pausing briefly when she heard muffled sounds coming from their bedroom. Her breath hitched and her pulse quickened. Step by careful step, she made her way to the top of the staircase. Just as she reached the final step, the bedroom door creaked open slightly. Grace froze. Her husband Brian stepped out, his shirt half-buttoned and his face pale as he saw her standing there. "Babe, what are you doing here?" he stammered, his voice unsteady. Grace's sharp eyes took in every detail. His wrinkled trousers, the loosely hanging belt, his disheveled hair. Something was terribly wrong. She stepped closer to him, her gaze unwavering. "I came home early too," Brian blurted out, shifting uncomfortably under her piercing stare. "I wanted to check on the kids, just to see if they were doing anything crazy." Grace said nothing, her heart pounding in her chest. She brushed past him and rushed into the children's rooms to confirm his story. In her daughter's room, she found the girl sitting on her bed holding a book. But there was something off about their posture, the way her eyes flickered nervously as they looked up from the pages. "Hi, Mom," they said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach their eyes. Grace's stomach twisted. Her children's behavior felt staged, as though they were hiding something. Her motherly instincts screamed that this wasn't just about the kids anymore. It was bigger. She returned to the hallway where Brian stood, his back turned to her, fiddling nervously with his belt. Grace's mind raced. The next day, Grace returned home earlier than expected. The house was eerily silent again. Her heart raced as she climbed the stairs. She hesitated at Annabel's door, hearing faint sounds. Pushing the door open, she froze. Her daughters were lying naked on the bed, their small bodies intertwined. "What is this?" Grace screamed, her voice cracking with anger and sorrow. The twins scrambled to cover themselves, tears streaming down their faces. "Mama, we didn't do anything bad," Annabel sobbed. Grace's rage subsided, replaced by confusion and heartbreak. That evening she confided in Brian. He too was horrified but struggled to accept the reality. The next day, Grace reviewed the hidden camera footage. What she saw left her trembling. Grace replayed the footage in her mind, her heart pounding with a mix of disbelief, rage, and profound sorrow. The betrayal was layered, cutting deeper with every thought. Brian, her husband, the man she had trusted with her life, had shattered the sanctity of their home. And Joyce, her younger sister, who had once been like a daughter to her, had driven the dagger even deeper. But the most devastating part was how their actions had tainted the innocence of her children. By morning, Grace's emotions were a storm waiting to be unleashed. She had barely slept, her mind racing with the implications of what she had seen. As Brian sat at the breakfast table, sipping his tea as if everything was normal, she felt a surge of anger boil over. Slamming the laptop on the table, she pressed play on the incriminating footage. Brian froze, the color draining from his face. Joyce, who had just walked into the room, gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "How could you?" Grace's voice was raw, trembling with rage. "How could you betray me like this? In our own home, under my roof with my sister?" Brian fumbled for words, his usual composure crumbling. "Grace, it wasn't like that. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." "A mistake?" Grace's voice rose, her fury igniting. "You didn't just trip and fall into her bed, Brian. You made a choice. Both of you did." Joyce, tears streaming down her face, fell to her knees. "Sister Grace, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please forgive me. I don't know what I was thinking." Grace glared at her sister, her heart breaking all over again. "You don't know what you were thinking. You knew exactly what you were doing, Joyce. You've destroyed this family. You've ruined my children's lives." As the confrontation spiraled, Brian tried to deflect responsibility. "Grace, let's talk about this calmly. Think about the girls. We can't let this break our family." Grace's eyes blazed with indignation. "Break our family? You already broke it, Brian. And do you even know what your actions have done to our daughters?" She then revealed what she had pieced together, that the twins had witnessed the affair through the slightly ajar door. Her voice cracked as she recounted how their innocent minds had tried to replicate what they had seen, unaware of its gravity. Brian's face contorted in horror. The girls! They saw? His voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Brian, they saw, and now they think this is normal. This is what you've done to them. Joyce sobbed uncontrollably, but Grace was unmoved. Her gaze shifted between the two culprits, the weight of their betrayal bearing down on her. I want both of you out of my house, she said, her voice cold and resolute. Today. Brian protested. Grace, please, let's fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it. Fix what? Grace cut him off sharply. You've ruined everything, Brian. You and Joyce don't belong here anymore. By afternoon, Brian and Joyce had packed their belongings. The tension in the house was suffocating as Grace avoided looking at either of them. When they finally left, the silence felt deafening, but it was a relief to Grace. The physical presence of the betrayal was gone, but the emotional scars were far from healed. That night, Grace sat her daughters down. She struggled to find the right words to explain the chaos that had unfolded. My darlings, she began, her voice soft but firm, what you saw was not right. It was wrong, and it's not something you should ever do or think is okay. The twins looked up at her with wide, tear-filled eyes. Are we bad, Mama? Annabel asked, her voice trembling. Grace's heart broke at the question. She pulled them close, wrapping her arms around their small bodies. No, my loves, you're not bad. None of this is your fault. I'm going to make sure we're okay. Who do you believe bears the most responsibility for the turmoil in Grace's life? Is it Joyce, her sister, or Brian, her husband? Share your opinions in the comments below. If this story made you as upset as it made me, tap the like button. Let's keep the discussion going in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe for more engaging stories like this. It was a rainy Tuesday night. The kind of rain that drums heavily on rooftops and makes the streets empty. Amara, a young woman in her late 20s, was home alone in her small apartment in Surulere. She had just finished a long day at work and was curled up on her couch, watching a Nollywood movie. The clock struck 11:47 p.m. when it happened. A loud, urgent knock on her door. Bang, bang, bang! Amara froze. Who could be at her door at this hour? Her mind raced. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her family lived in Enugu, and her friends knew better than to visit unannounced, especially this late. The knock came again, louder this time. Bang, bang, bang! Amara didn't have time to think. She ran to her bedroom and hid the package under her mattress. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed the police, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely press the numbers. But before she could finish the call, she heard a scream, a blood-curdling scream, from the living room. Amara rushed to Chaik's side. Chaik, stay with me, she whispered, shaking him gently. Chaik's eyes fluttered open, and he grabbed her arm with surprising strength. The package, he gasped. Don't let them. His voice trailed off, and his grip loosened. Amara didn't know what to do. She was trapped in a car with a woman who might be just as dangerous as the men chasing her. And then, Ada did something unexpected. She pulled out a gun and pointed it at Amara. Hand it over, she said, her voice icy. Now. Have you ever heard a knock on your door that changed everything? Let me tell you a story, a true story, that happened right here in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a story of suspense, fear, and a twist that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about trust. Ready? Let's dive in. It was a rainy Tuesday night, the kind of rain that drums heavily on rooftops and makes the streets empty. Amara, a young woman in her late 20s, was home alone in her small apartment in Surulere. She had just finished a long day at work and was curled up on her couch, watching a Nollywood movie. The clock struck 11:47 p.m. when it happened, a loud, urgent knock on her door. Bang, bang, bang! Amara froze. Who could be at her door at this hour? Her mind raced. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her family lived in Enugu, and her friends knew better than to visit unannounced, especially this late. The knock came again, louder this time. Bang, bang, bang! Her heart pounded as she tiptoed to the door. She peered through the peephole and saw a man drenched from the rain. He looked frantic, his eyes wide with panic. Against her better judgment, she cracked the door open, leaving the chain lock on. Please, help me, the man begged, his voice trembling. They're after me. Amara's instincts screamed at her to shut the door, but something in his voice made her hesitate. Who's after you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't explain now, he said, glancing over his shoulder. Please, just let me in. I promise I won't hurt you. Now imagine this. You're Amara. What would you do? Let a stranger into your home at midnight, or turn him away and risk whatever or whoever was chasing him? Amara made a choice. She unchained the door and let him in. The man introduced himself as Chaike. He was shaking, his clothes soaked, and his hands stained with what looked like blood. Amara's mind raced with questions, but before she could ask, Chika grabbed her arm. Listen, he said, I don't have much time. They're coming for me, and if they find me here, you'll be in danger too. Amara's fear turned to anger. Who are they? What did you do? Chaik hesitated, then said, I stole something from them, something valuable, but I didn't know who they were until it was too late. Before Amara could respond, they heard it, a car pulling up outside, its engine growling in the quiet night. Chaik's face went pale. They're here, he whispered. Amara peeked through the curtains and saw 3 men stepping out of a black SUV. They looked dangerous, their faces hard and their movements deliberate. One of them carried a machete. Amara's apartment was on the 2nd floor. There was no back door, no fire escape. They were trapped. Chika grabbed her hand. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to drag you into this. The men began pounding on the door downstairs, shouting for Chaik to come out. Amara's mind raced. What could she do? Call the police? But what if they were in on it? Or worse, what if they didn't arrive in time? Then Cheek did something unexpected. He pulled out a small wrapped package from his pocket and handed it to Amara. Take this, he said. If anything happens to me, make sure it gets to my sister. Her name is Ada. She lives in Ikeja. Amara stared at the package, her hands trembling. What is this? She asked. Before Chika could answer, the door downstairs burst open. Heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Chika looked at Amara, his eyes filled with desperation. Hide, he said, and whatever you do, don't let them find that package. Amara didn't have time to think. She ran to her bedroom and hid the package under her mattress. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed the police, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely press the numbers. But before she could finish the call, she heard a scream, a blood-curdling scream, from the living room. She froze. The footsteps were coming closer. Her door creaked open, and there stood one of the men, his machete glinting in the dim light. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile, and said, Where is it? Amara's mind raced. She knew she had to think fast. If she told him about the package, what would stop him from killing her once he had it? But if she lied, would he believe her? She took a deep breath and decided to play along. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I don't have anything. The man stepped closer, the machete glinting in the dim light. Don't play games with me, he growled. We know he came here. Where is he? And where is what he stole? Amara's heart pounded. She glanced toward the living room, where she had last seen Chaik. The scream she had heard earlier echoed in her mind. Was he still alive? Before the man could take another step, there was a loud crash from the living room. The sound startled him, and he turned his head for just a second, but that was all Amara needed. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a heavy ceramic vase, and swung it at his head with all her might. Crash! The man stumbled, dazed, and Amara didn't wait to see if he would recover. She bolted out of the bedroom, her heart pounding in her chest. The living room was a mess. The coffee table was overturned, and Chika was lying on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. The other 2 men were nowhere to be seen. Amara rushed to Chaik's side. Chaik, stay with me, she whispered, shaking him gently. Chaik's eyes fluttered open, and he grabbed her arm with surprising strength. The package, he gasped. Don't let them... His voice trailed off, and his grip loosened. Amara's heart broke. She didn't know Cheek well, but in that moment, she felt a deep connection to him. He had trusted her with something important, and now he was gone. But there was no time to grieve. The man from the bedroom would be back any second, and the other two were still out there. Amara made a split-second decision. She grabbed the package from under her mattress, stuffed it into her bag, and ran out of the apartment. The rain was still pouring, soaking her within seconds, but she didn't care. She had to get away. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. As Amara ran down the street, she realized she had no idea where to go. Cheek had mentioned his sister Ada in Ikeya, but how could she find her? And what if the men were following her? Just then, a car pulled up beside her. Amara's heart leapt into her throat. Was it them? But no, it was a woman, her face kind but urgent. "Get in," the woman said. "I'm Ada, Chaik's sister." Amara hesitated. How did Ada know where to find her? But with the sound of footsteps approaching behind her, she didn't have time to question it. She jumped into the car and Ada sped off into the night. Now you're probably thinking, okay, she's safe now, right? Wrong. Because as they drove, Ada's demeanor changed. Her kind expression faded, replaced by something colder, more calculating. "Do you have it?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the road. Amara's stomach churned. "Have what?" she asked, playing dumb. Ada's voice turned sharp. "The package, Amara. Don't act stupid. Chaik stole it from me, and I need it back." Amara's blood ran cold. Chaik had stolen the package from his own sister, and now Ada was after it too. What was in this package that was so important? Amara didn't know what to do. She was trapped in a car with a woman who might be just as dangerous as the men chasing her. And then, Ada did something unexpected. She pulled out a gun and pointed it at Amara. "Hand it over," she said, her voice icy. "Now!" Amara's mind raced. She had no choice. She reached into her bag and pulled out the package, but as she handed it to Ada, she noticed something strange. The wrapping was coming loose, and inside was a flash drive. A flash drive. What could be on it that was worth all this? Amara didn't have time to wonder. Ada grabbed the package, but before she could do anything else, there was a loud bang. The car swerved violently, and Amara realized they were being shot at. The men from the apartment had found them. Ada slammed on the brakes, sending the car skidding across the wet road. "Get down!" she shouted, ducking as bullets shattered the rear window. Amara crouched in her seat, her heart pounding. She had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. She was caught in the middle of a deadly game. Ada threw the car into reverse and sped backward, swerving to avoid the men's SUV. Then, with a sharp turn, she veered onto a side street, the tires screeching against the asphalt. "Hold on!" she yelled, her voice tight with tension. Amara clung to her seat as the car raced through the narrow streets of Lagos. The rain made visibility almost impossible, but Ada drove like a woman possessed. Behind them, the SUV was gaining ground, its headlights cutting through the darkness like twin beams of doom. "Who are they?" Amara shouted over the noise of the engine and the rain. "They work for a powerful man," Ada replied, her eyes fixed on the road. "A man who will do anything to get that flash drive back." "What's on it?" Amara asked, her voice trembling. Ada hesitated, then said, "Evidence. Evidence that could bring down some of the most corrupt people in this country. Cheek stole it to expose them, but he didn't realize how dangerous they were." Amara's mind raced. Corruption? Powerful people? This was bigger than she had imagined. But before she could process it, Ada slammed on the brakes again. They were at a dead end. The SUV pulled up behind them, blocking their escape. The men stepped out, their guns trained on the car. Ada cursed under her breath. "We're out of options," she said, turning to Amara. "But I'm not going down without a fight." Ada reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a second gun. She handed it to Amara. "Do you know how to use this?" she asked. Amara shook her head, her hands shaking. "No, but I'll figure it out." Ada nodded. "Stay behind me, and whatever you do, don't let them get the flash drive." With that, Ada kicked open her door and opened fire. Amara followed, her heart in her throat. The night erupted into chaos. Gunshots, shouting, the sound of bullets hitting metal. Amara ducked behind the car, clutching the gun like a lifeline. And then, in the midst of the chaos, Amara saw her chance. One of the men was distracted, reloading his gun. She didn't think, she just acted. She ran. She ran as fast as she could, the flash drive clutched in her hand, the sound of gunfire echoing behind her. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away. She turned down alleyways, jumped over fences, and finally stumbled into a crowded market. The noise and lights were overwhelming, but they also provided cover. She blended into the crowd, her heart still racing. Amara didn't stop running until she reached a small internet cafe. She paid for a computer, her hands still shaking, and plugged in the flash drive. What she found on it took her breath away. Documents, videos, recordings, all implicating high-ranking officials in a massive corruption scandal. This was the evidence Ada had mentioned. This was what Cheek had died for. Amara knew what she had to do. She copied the files and sent them to every major news outlet in the country. Then she deleted the originals and destroyed the flash drive. It was out of her hands now. The next morning, the story broke. The scandal dominated the headlines, and the country was in an uproar. The men who had chased Amara were arrested, along with the officials named in the files. Ada disappeared, her fate unknown. As for Amara, she moved away from Lagos, changed her name, and started a new life. She never forgot Chika or the night that changed everything. But she also knew that she had done the right thing. She had helped expose the truth, even if it came at a great cost. And that's the end of the story. But here's the thing. Sometimes, the most ordinary people find themselves in extraordinary situations. And sometimes, they rise to the occasion. Amara could have turned Chika away that night. She could have given up when things got tough. But she didn't. She chose to fight. And in doing so, she made a difference. So, what would you have done in her shoes? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more real-life tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The streets of Lagos never sleep. The yellow buses screech against the asphalt. Vendors shout over the honking traffic, and people move like restless waves under the flickering streetlights. But Mercy does not see Lagos the way others do. She sees the shadows, not the ones cast by the setting sun or the dim glow of street lamps. No, these shadows live in people's eyes. Some are faint wisps, shifting like mist. Others are thick, curling into ominous shapes that whisper of impending doom. She has spent her whole life learning to ignore them, until now. Standing at a crowded bus stop, she grips her bag tightly, her pulse quickening as she looks around. Every face she sees carries its fate, some hopeful, some tragic. Then her breath catches. A woman, no older than 30, stands a few feet away, holding a child. But the shadow in her eyes is dense, writhing like a living thing. Mercy swallows hard. She doesn't have to look twice to know what it means. Death, soon. She should say something. She should warn her. But what would she say? The bus arrives, tires screeching to a halt. People shove forward. The woman steps onto the bus unaware. Mercy watches helplessly as the doors slam shut. The bus pulls away. Then in the distance, a loud crash. Screams. Mercy's knees go weak. She doesn't need to see to know. The woman's shadow had not lied. The crash still echoed in Mercy's mind long after the bus had vanished from sight. She had seen it coming, felt the weight of inevitability, yet she had done nothing. Could she have changed it? She took a shaky breath, stepping onto another bus heading home. The air was thick with sweat and impatience. The driver barked at a passenger who didn't have exact change. The conductor hung dangerously from the open door, shouting at people to move inside, someone watching her. She turned. A man sat directly across from her. He was ordinary looking, dressed in a plain shirt and jeans, yet something about him made her stomach twist. It wasn't his face or his stare, it was his eyes. There were no shadows. For the first time in her life, she saw nothing in someone's eyes. No wisps of fate, no curling threads of destiny. It was an empty void, as if he did not exist at all. Her heartbeat thundered. Then he smirked. "You see them, don't you?" His voice was calm, eerily knowing. Mercy's mouth went dry. No one had ever spoken to her about her sight before. No one was supposed to know. Before she could react, the bus jolted to a stop. Passengers shuffled to get off. She blinked, and the man was gone. A chill crept down her spine. Who was he, and why did he have no shadow at all? Mercy barely made it home that night. Her hands trembled as she locked the door behind her, her breathing shallow. The man's words echoed in her ears. "You see them, don't you?" She had never spoken of her ability to anyone, not even her mother, who had always sensed there was something different about her. No one knew, no one could know. Yet, that man had looked at her as if he understood everything. She tried to convince herself that she was overreacting, that it was just a coincidence, but deep down, she knew better. The moment she had looked into his eyes and seen nothing, she had felt it. Something was wrong. Sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, she was pulled into a restless dream. She stood in a vast empty space, surrounded by voices whispering in a language she didn't understand. Shadows flickered around her, shifting and twisting like smoke. Then she saw him. The man stood in the distance, his face obscured. "You don't know what you are, do you?" His voice was clear now, cutting through the whispers like a blade. Mercy tried to move, to run, but her feet were rooted to the ground. The shadows thickened, curling around her legs, pulling her down. She gasped and woke with a start. The room was silent, but something wasn't right. Then she saw it. A slip of paper had been pushed under her door. Her heart pounded as she picked it up, her fingers trembling. "Meet me at 3rd Mainland Bridge. Midnight. Come alone." She dropped the note, her breath catching in her throat. How had he found her? The city never truly slept, but at midnight the roads were quieter, the air heavier. Mercy's footsteps echoed as she approached 3rd Mainland Bridge, her heart hammering against her ribs. Every logical part of her screamed turn back, but something stronger, fear, curiosity, or destiny, kept her moving. The water beneath the bridge stretched out like an endless black void, swallowing the faint city lights. The air smelled of damp salt and gasoline. Then she saw him. The man from the bus stood by the railing, gazing out over the water. He looked so ordinary, yet the emptiness in his eyes made her stomach twist. "You came," he said without turning. His voice was calm, as if he had been expecting her all along. Mercy swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand her ground. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" He finally turned to face her. "Not everything is meant to be seen, Adana." The way he said her name sent a chill down her spine. She clenched her fists. "How do you know me?" He tilted his head, amused. "Because you've been looking at everyone else's fate for too long, but you've never looked at your own." Before she could process his words, he stepped closer. His eyes, those void-like pools, shifted, and for the first time ever, Mercy saw herself in someone's eyes. A shadow formed, dark and monstrous, curling around her reflection. But this time, it wasn't someone else's fate she was seeing. It was her own. Her breath caught. The shadow in his eyes swallowed her whole. The world around her blurred. A ringing filled her ears. Then, everything went black. Mercy gasped as she jolted awake. Cold air pricked her skin, and the world around her felt different. She was still on the bridge, but the city lights seemed dimmer, the night sky darker, as if a veil had been drawn over reality itself. The man stood in front of her, watching, his face unreadable. "What did you do to me?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I only showed you the truth." His voice was calm, but his eyes, those hollow, empty eyes, held something else now. Pity. Mercy's breathing came in quick bursts. "That shadow, in your eyes, it was me. What does it mean?" The man exhaled, as if choosing his words carefully. "It means your gift isn't what you think it is." Her stomach twisted. "I don't understand." He took a step closer. "You see shadows of destiny, yes? But did you ever ask yourself why? Why you, Adana?" Her mind raced. She had never questioned it. She had assumed, no, accepted, that it was just how she was born. The man sighed. You weren't supposed to have this sight. It was never yours. Mercy's breath hitched. What? Your grandmother stole it. The word slammed into her like a physical blow. No. She shook her head. That's not possible. Grandma would never. Wouldn't she? His voice was almost gentle. You think gifts like this come without consequence. She meddled with forces she didn't understand. She took what was meant for someone else and bound it to you. Mercy felt the world tilting. No, this couldn't be true, but deep down, something clicked. The way her grandmother had always looked at her, proud but fearful. The way she had whispered warnings. Not all shadows are meant to be seen, Adana. The man's voice cut through her thoughts. And now, the shadows are coming for what was stolen. A cold dread spread through her chest. She had spent her whole life seeing other people's destinies, but now her own was unfolding, and it was dark. Mercy barely remembered how she got home. Her mind was a storm, her body running on fear and instinct. The moment she stepped inside, she grabbed her phone and booked the first bus ticket to her grandmother's village. The next morning, she arrived in Umuahia, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Grandma House was at the edge of the village, nestled between towering palm trees and old secrets. Her hands trembled as she knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing a frail, wrinkled woman wrapped in a faded wrapper. Her sharp eyes widened the moment she saw Adana. You know, Grandma whispered. Mercy's throat tightened. She knew. She had always known. Pushing past the threshold, she demanded, "Tell me the truth. All of it." Her grandmother sank into a wooden chair, her hands trembling. "I did it to protect our family," she murmured. Mercy felt the anger bubbling. "You stole it from someone. Who?" Grandma's eyes glistened with age-old guilt. "From a dying seer. He was cursed, doomed to be swallowed by his own visions. I thought I was saving you." Mercy staggered back. "By binding his curse to me?" Her grandmother's silence was answer enough. Tears burned in Mercy's eyes. She had never been special. She had been doomed from the start. Then a chill ran through her spine. The shadows. They weren't just watching anymore. They were moving, and they were coming for her. The air inside Grandma's house grew heavy, suffocating. The dim lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows along the mud walls. But Mercy knew these were not ordinary shadows. They moved. One by one, they peeled away from the corners, curling and shifting like living things. They slithered along the walls, pulling at her feet. The whispers began, low, indecipherable murmurs, voices from a place beyond the living. Mercy's breath came in shallow gasps. She staggered back, clutching the edge of the wooden table. "Mama, what's happening?" Her grandmother's eyes were wide with terror. "They've come to take back what does not belong to you." The shadows thickened, rising like a tide. Then they lunged. Mercy screamed as an icy force gripped her limbs. Her vision blurred, her mind drowning in a sea of darkness. Images flashed, faces she had seen over the years, destinies she had glimpsed, the dying seer gasping for air as his gift was ripped away. Then a voice, deep and hollow, echoed in her ears. "Return what was stolen or be consumed." Mercy struggled, her pulse hammering. Was this the end? Was this how her story ended? Not seeing someone else's fate, but facing her own. Her grandmother's voice cut through the chaos. "There is only one way to stop this." Mercy turned to her, desperate. "How?" Grandma's face was pale. "You must give it up, forever." Mercy's pulse pounded in her ears. The shadows coiled around her, their whispers growing louder, their grip tightening. She could barely breathe. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "You must give it up, forever." The gift, the curse, had defined her entire life. It had been both a burden and a power. Without it, who would she be? But there was no time to hesitate. The shadows were relentless, clawing at her skin, pulling her into the void. "Mama, how?" she gasped. Grandma scrambled to the old wooden chest in the corner, pulling out a small black calabash. Its surface was etched with ancient symbols. "This will take it from you," she said, her voice trembling. "But once it's gone, it's gone. You will never see them again. never know what awaits in people's eyes. Mercy stared at the calabash. Her entire life she had been haunted by her sight. But now, facing the darkness, she realized something terrifying. She had come to depend on it. Could she live in the unknown, like everyone else? Could she walk through life blind to destiny? A violent pull yanked at her soul. The shadows were winning. She had no choice. With a final breath, she grabbed the calabash. The moment her fingers touched it, the world exploded into light. The shadows screamed, the air rippled, and then everything went silent. Mercy gasped, her body trembling as the weight of the shadows lifted. The air felt lighter, clearer, as if an invisible chain had been broken. She blinked rapidly, expecting to see the familiar shifting shadows in her grandmother's eyes. But there was nothing. No wisps of fate, no warnings of death, no glimpses into the unseen. She had done it. The sight was gone. Tears pricked her eyes, relief, grief, or something in between. She turned to Mama Nkechi, who exhaled deeply, looking older than ever. "It is done," her grandmother whispered. Mercy wanted to believe it, to move forward, to live a normal life. But then, a movement in the corner of the room. Her breath hitched. The man from the bridge was standing there, but that was impossible. He wasn't supposed to be here. She took a step back. You said this would end it." The man smiled, slow, knowing. It ended something. The lantern flickered, casting long shadows behind him. But now she could not see into his eyes. For the first time, Mercy was truly blind, and yet she felt it. Something was still wrong. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you really think you were just a seer?" Her heart stopped. The shadows hadn't come to take something from her. They had come to return what had always been hers. Mercy's blood ran cold. She hadn't lost a gift. She had awakened something else entirely, something even worse. And this time she had no idea what it was. The night was still, the air heavy with a strange unease. Dio, Segun and Tope sped down the narrow, dimly lit road in their black car, its engine roaring like an angry beast. Inside, the atmosphere was filled with a mix of alcohol, loud music, and the arrogant laughter of three young men who believed they had outsmarted fate. Dio, sitting behind the wheel, was grinning ear to ear. His confidence was palpable as he spoke over the deafening music. "We've done it, guys! This December will be one for the books," he boasted, gripping the steering wheel with one hand while sipping from a bottle of whiskey with the other. Segun, seated in the passenger seat, leaned back with a smug expression. "Everything we've ever wanted, money, power, it's finally ours. That old man said the ritual is complete. Now we just wait for the rewards," he said, his voice filled with excitement. In the back seat, Tope laughed as he clinked his bottle against Segun's. "Let's toast to our new lives," he declared, his words slurred but triumphant. The car raced forward, headlights cutting through the darkness. Dio, emboldened by their perceived success, pressed harder on the accelerator, the speedometer needle climbing dangerously high. The narrow road twisted and turned, but Dio paid no heed, his recklessness fueled by their sense of invincibility. As they approached a sharp bend, the road's surface became uneven, gravel crunching under the tires. The car swerved slightly, but Dio laughed it off. "Relax, guys. I've got this," he said, his tone casual. Segun glanced ahead and noticed the faint glow of headlights in the distance. "Hey, Dio, slow down," he said, his voice tinged with unease. But Dio waved him off, his overconfidence blinding him to the growing danger. "Come on, Segun, don't be a coward," Dio scoffed. He turned up the music, drowning out any further protests. The car barreled forward, its speed increasing with every passing second. As the car rounded the bend, the headlights from the other vehicle, an enormous truck, suddenly appeared, illuminating the road ahead like a blinding flash of light. The truck, fully loaded and moving at a steady pace, loomed in front of them like an unstoppable wall of steel. The truck driver, seeing the speeding car, slammed on his horn, the deafening blare cutting through the night like a warning bell. Dio's grin vanished as panic set in. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white as he tried to swerve. It was a calm morning in the bustling town of Ukweli, a place where the December air carried the scent of festivities and distant hope. The streets were alive with the chatter of traders setting up their stalls and children playing under the shade of mango trees. But in a modest house on the outskirts of town, the mood was far from festive. Mama Nkechi woke up early, her heart heavy with a sense of foreboding. She knelt on her woven mat, her hands clasped tightly as she prayed aloud, her voice rising like a melody calling on the heavens. "Nkechi, Chiamaka, come and join me in prayers," she called out firmly. Her youngest daughter, Nkechi, a radiant young woman in her final year at Ukweli Polytechnic, reluctantly knelt beside her. Nkechi was Mama Nkechi's pride, a bright, ambitious girl who stood out among her peers. After the prayers, Mama Nkechi turned to her daughter, her voice sharp with urgency. "Nkechi, listen to me," she said, her eyes wide and serious. "Do not go anywhere today. I don't care who invites you or what they promise. Stay at home." "But Mama," Nkechi began to protest, but Mama Nkechi interrupted her, her tone rising like the beat of a drum. "No arguments, my child. If you value your life, do not leave this house." Nkechi nodded reluctantly, her mind already drifting elsewhere. The morning chores were soon completed, and despite her mother's warning, Nkechi dressed up, tied her headscarf neatly, and stepped out into the bright December sun. At the Polytechnic campus, Nkechi met her two closest friends, Ada and Ifunanya, two vivacious young women known for their boldness and style. Ada wore a sparkling red dress, while Ifunanya's skirt shimmered in the sunlight. "Nkechi, you're glowing today," Ada teased, her laughter ringing like a bell. "You've brought December cheer." "Yes, she's shining like the morning star," Ifunanya added, giggling. The three friends stood together, chatting and laughing, unaware that their day was about to spiral into darkness. "Have you heard?" Ada suddenly said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Classes have been cancelled till next year." "Ah, so my transport fare today was wasted," Nkechi sighed, shaking her head. "Don't worry," Ifunanya said with a mischievous grin. "We won't let the day go to waste. We're going to a small party." Nkechi froze, her mother's warning echoing in her mind. "I don't think I can go," she said hesitantly. "I need to study." "Oh, come on, Nkechi," Ada said, rolling her eyes. "It's just a small party. Music, food, and nothing serious." "Don't be a killjoy," Ifunanya added, nudging her playfully. "We'll just dance a little and come back." Against her better judgment, Nkechi finally gave in. "Okay, but just for a little while," she said, her voice low. Not long after, a shiny black car pulled up, music booming from its speakers. Dayo, Ifunanya's boyfriend, stepped out, accompanied by his friends Segun and Tope. They were confident, charming, and their smiles carried promises of fun. The girls hopped into the car, their laughter rising like birds taking flight. Nkechi sat quietly, her unease growing as the car sped off toward what she thought would be a harmless party. The house was alive with music and lights, the air thick with the smell of grilled meat and perfume. People danced in pairs, their bodies moving rhythmically like leaves swaying in the wind. At first, Nkechi stayed on the sidelines, but eventually she joined the others, her friends pulling her into the fun. After hours of dancing, Dayo clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise for you all," he announced with a wide grin. Excitement filled the room as Dayo led the group to a nearby hotel, where a lavish table was set with food and drinks. "Eat, my queens," Dayo said, pulling out chairs for the girls. The feast began, and the room echoed with laughter and music. Far away, Mama Nkechi sat in her market stall, her heart restless. She dialed Nkechi's number again and again, but there was no response. "God, protect my child," she whispered, clutching her phone tightly. Back at the hotel, Nkechi's unease grew. The laughter around her felt distant, and the air seemed heavy. Suddenly her head began to spin, her vision blurring. She tried to stand, but her legs gave way. Around her, Ada and Ifunanya also collapsed, their laughter replaced by silence. When Nkechi woke up, she was in a dark, abandoned building. The air was damp and cold, and her hands and legs were tied with ropes. She looked around and saw Ada and Ifunanya beside her, unconscious. In front of them stood Dio, Segun, and Tope, their faces devoid of the warmth they once carried. Behind them, an old man emerged, holding gleaming knives and a calabash. His presence was suffocating, his eyes burning with malice. "What is this?" Nkechi whispered, fear gripping her like a vice. "Silence!" the old man barked, his voice echoing in the empty room. He handed a knife to Dio. "It's time." The girls screamed and pleaded, but their captors showed no mercy. Ada was the first to be forced into drinking a foul-smelling liquid. Moments later, her lifeless body fell to the ground, and the old man raised his knife. Nkechi fought with all her strength, vomiting out the liquid each time they forced it down her throat. The old man grew frustrated. "She cannot be killed," he declared angrily. "Let her live, but she will never be whole again." Meanwhile, Mama Nkechi's unease reached its peak. As she prayed fervently, a commotion erupted near the market. A battered and bruised Nkechi had been dumped by the roadside, barely alive. Mama Nkechi ran to her, her cries piercing the air as she held her daughter close. At the same time, Dio and his friends sped away, laughing about their success. The night was still, the air heavy with a strange unease. Dio, Segun, and Tope sped down the narrow, dimly lit road in their black car, its engine roaring like an angry beast. Inside, the atmosphere was filled with a mix of alcohol, loud music, and the arrogant laughter of three young men who believed they had outsmarted fate. Dio, sitting behind the wheel, was grinning ear to ear. His confidence was palpable as he spoke over the deafening music. "We've done it, guys! This December will be one for the books," he boasted, gripping the steering wheel with one hand while sipping from a bottle of whiskey with the other. Segun, seated in the passenger seat, leaned back with a smug expression. "Everything we've ever wanted, money, power, it's finally ours. That old man said the ritual is complete. Now we just wait for the rewards," he said, his voice filled with excitement. In the back seat, Tope laughed as he clinked his bottle against Segun's. "Let's toast to our new lives," he declared, his words slurred but triumphant. The car raced forward, headlights cutting through the darkness. Dio, emboldened by their perceived success, pressed harder on the accelerator, the speedometer needle climbing dangerously high. The narrow road twisted and turned, but Dio paid no heed, his recklessness fueled by their sense of invincibility. As they approached a sharp bend, the road's surface became uneven, gravel crunching under the tires. The car swerved slightly, but Dio laughed it off. "Relax, guys. I've got this," he said, his tone casual. Segun glanced ahead and noticed the faint glow of headlights in the distance. "Hey, Dio, slow down," he said, his voice tinged with unease. But Dio waved him off, his overconfidence blinding him to the growing danger. "Come on, Segun, don't be a coward," Dio scoffed. He turned up the music, drowning out any further protests. The car barreled forward, its speed increasing with every passing second. As the car rounded the bend, the headlights from the other vehicle, an enormous truck, suddenly appeared, illuminating the road ahead like a blinding flash of light. The truck, fully loaded and moving at a steady pace, loomed in front of them like an unstoppable wall of steel. The truck driver, seeing the speeding car, slammed on his horn, the deafening blare cutting through the night like a warning bell. Dio's grin vanished as panic set in. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white as he tried to swerve. "Dio, brake now!" Segun screamed, his voice shrill with terror. Dio slammed on the brakes, but the car was moving too fast. The tires screeched against the gravel, smoke rising as the car skidded uncontrollably. Segun braced himself, clutching the dashboard, while Tope screamed from the back seat, his voice drowned out by the chaos. The car spun sideways, its rear end swinging dangerously close to the edge of the road, but there was no escaping the inevitable. The truck plowed into the car with a thunderous crash, the sound of metal crumpling and glass shattering echoing into the night. The impact was devastating. The front of the car crumpled like paper, the hood smashed inward as the truck's massive grille tore through it. The windshield shattered, shards of glass flying in all directions. Smoke billowed from the wreckage, mingling with the acrid stench of burning rubber and leaking fuel. Inside the car, the scene was horrific. Segun, seated in the passenger seat, had borne the full force of the collision. His body was crushed against the dashboard, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled around him, his lifeless eyes staring into the void. Dio was pinned behind the steering wheel, his legs crushed beneath the mangled metal. Blood streamed down his face, one of his eyes reduced to a gaping, bloody socket. He screamed in agony, his cries piercing the silence of the night. In the back seat, Tope groaned weakly, his arm severed just below the elbow. Blood spurted from the stump as he writhed in pain, his face contorted in agony. Why did we do this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the truck's idling engine. The truck driver, though shaken, stepped out of his vehicle to assess the damage. His flashlight illuminated the wreckage, revealing the extent of the devastation. Villagers from nearby houses, awakened by the noise, began to gather at the scene, their faces etched with shock and horror. "It's them!" one of the villagers exclaimed. "The boys who dumped that girl at the market!" As the villagers pieced together the events of the night, whispers of divine retribution spread like wildfire. The same boys who had caused so much pain were now paying the price for their wickedness. Police arrived shortly after, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. Officers pulled the broken bodies of Dio and Tope from the wreckage, their faces grim as they surveyed the carnage. Dio's screams of pain continued as he was loaded into an ambulance, his once proud demeanor replaced by pitiful desperation. Segun's lifeless body was carefully removed, his dreams of wealth and power ending in a pool of blood. Tope, barely conscious, was rushed to the hospital, his severed arm clutched in the hands of an officer. The crash became the talk of the town, a chilling reminder that no evil deed goes unpunished. Dio and Tope, though alive, faced a grim future. Their dreams of riches had turned to ashes. Back in Ukweli, Nkechi's story spread like wildfire. Her survival became a tale of caution, a warning to all about the dangers of ignoring wise counsel. Though scarred and weakened, Nkechi found solace in her mother's arms, vowing to live with purpose. As December ended, Ukweli was reminded of a harsh truth. Temptation often comes disguised as joy. And in the quiet of the town, Mama Nkechi's prayers continued, her faith unshaken, her daughter safe once more. The lights were blinding and the crowd was roaring as Adetayo's voice soared through the auditorium. His final note echoed, captivating everyone in the packed hall. The applause was deafening, but not everyone was clapping. Kunle stood backstage, his jaw tight and fists clenched, the shadows masking the bitterness in his eyes. The chants of "Adetayo! Adetayo!" felt like a mocking chorus. Kunle had worked for weeks perfecting his dance routine, yet no one was talking about him. It was always Adetayo, his voice, his humility, his faith. Kunle's stomach churned with envy. "Why is it only him God loves?" he muttered under his breath. The plan had been simple. Earlier that day, Kunle had slipped a note to the tech crew, claiming to be from the organizers. "Disable the lights during Adetayo's performance for effect." He watched now as the lights above the stage flickered. Adetayo's voice faltered slightly, his confusion barely noticeable to the audience. The applause turned to murmurs as the stage was plunged into sudden darkness. Kunle smirked, slipping unnoticed into the chaos. He didn't need to stay to know what would follow: blame, suspicion, and doubt. As he disappeared into the crowd, he thought, "Let's see how perfect he is now." 2 years earlier, under the scorching Lagos sun, Adetayo and Kunle had met for the first time during a community outreach program at Makoko. Adetayo, dressed in a faded shirt and worn jeans, was leading a group of children in a hymn. His voice was like honey, effortlessly drawing people in. Kunle, standing on the sidelines in branded sneakers and a designer cap, had watched in awe. "You sing well," Kunle had said after the session, extending a hand. "Thanks," Adetayo replied with a shy smile. "I sing in my church choir. It's how I connect with God." That day marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Despite their differences, Kunle admired Adetayo's grounded nature and unwavering faith. Adetayo in turn was drawn to Kunle's confidence and flamboyant personality. They bonded over their shared dreams of making it big, Adetayo as a gospel artist, Kunle as a professional dancer. But cracks began to show when they both auditioned for Youth Talent Rising. Adetayo's audition was flawless, earning praise from the judges. Kunle, on the other hand, struggled to keep up with his choreography, his nerves betraying him. As Kunle stepped off the stage, he overheard a judge saying, "That Adetayo boy is a star." From that moment, something shifted. Kunle's admiration turned sour, jealousy creeping in like a shadow. While Adetayo celebrated each milestone, Kunle's mind festered with one burning question: why does everything come so easily to him? As the competition intensified, Adetayo began noticing strange things happening around him. It started small, a microphone cutting out during rehearsal, a misplaced costume for a group number. But he brushed them off as coincidences. Yet, a nagging feeling in his chest told him otherwise. One evening, while preparing for a crucial practice session, Adetayo received a message on his phone: "Drop out if you know what's good for you." He stared at the screen, his heartbeat quickening. Chioma, his closest friend, noticed his unease. "Adetayo, this isn't normal. Someone's trying to rattle you," she said, concern etched on her face. Meanwhile, Kunle's jealousy brewed into full-blown resentment. Every time he saw Adetayo's name trending or overheard the judges praising his talent, it felt like a dagger to his pride. "Why does everything come so easily to him?" Kunle muttered to himself. He decided to take matters into his own hands. During a rehearsal, Kunle bribed a stagehand to swap Adetayo's microphone for one that emitted feedback. When Adetayo began singing, the screech of the faulty mic disrupted the session, causing everyone to wince. Adetayo's composure faltered for a moment, but he quickly adjusted, using his powerful voice to rise above the chaos. The other contestants clapped, impressed by his resilience. Backstage, Kunle seethed. Even when he stumbles, people still adore him. He wasn't done. The sabotage escalated. Adetayo's song list mysteriously went missing hours before another rehearsal. When he requested a replacement, the organizers hesitated, insinuating carelessness on his part. Adetayo felt the pressure mounting, but he refused to confront anyone without evidence. As the final round approached, the tension was palpable. Adetayo knew someone was working against him, but he had no idea how far they were willing to go, or how close the enemy truly was. The night of the finals was supposed to be Adetayo's shining moment. He had rehearsed tirelessly, praying for strength as the tension mounted. Backstage, Kunle watched him prepare, his stomach in knots. He slipped the judge's phone into Adetayo's bag, his hands trembling as the final act of sabotage was set in motion. As Adetayo stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted in cheers. But before he could begin, the host appeared, looking uneasy. "Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a serious incident backstage," he announced. "A judge's phone has gone missing, and security believes they've found the culprit." Adetayo froze as security guards approached him. "Please step aside," one of them said, rummaging through his belongings. Within moments, they pulled out the phone. Gasps rippled through the audience as cameras flashed. Adetayo's heart sank, his voice trembling. "I didn't take it." Kunle stood in the shadows, expecting Adetayo to lose his composure. Instead, Adetayo remained calm, insisting on his innocence. "Let's find the truth," he said firmly. The judge, feeling uneasy, checked her office and discovered the phone had been mistakenly placed in another drawer earlier. The accusation was immediately dropped. Backstage, Kunle panicked. He hadn't planned for this outcome. Chioma, Adetayo's friend, caught sight of Kunle's distressed expression and decided to record him. Later, she reviewed the footage and noticed something suspicious. Kunle avoiding eye contact and mumbling under his breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. The truth was unraveling, and Kunle had no idea how close it was to catching up with him. Adetayo found Kunle leaning against a wall backstage, arms crossed and head down, as if he'd been expecting him. The tension was palpable. Adetayo's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with hurt. "Why, Kunle? Why are you doing this? I thought we were friends." Kunle glanced up, his jaw tightening. "Friends?" he scoffed. "You think this is about friendship? It's always you, Adetayo. You walk into a room and everyone loves you. You barely have to try. Meanwhile, I'm here, breaking my back and no one even notices. Adetayo took a step closer. You think it's been easy for me? Do you know how many nights I've prayed? How much I've struggled to even be here? I thought you understood, Kunle. Kunle's voice rose, bitterness spilling out. Understand? All I see is someone God seems to favor while I'm left behind. Why is it only you God loves? Adetayo's shoulders sagged, his hurt softening into something else, compassion. Kunle, God's love isn't a competition. There's enough for all of us. I don't want to be your rival. I want to be your friend. Kunle turned away, unable to meet Adetayo's gaze. Maybe you're right, he muttered, his voice barely audible. But inside, he wasn't ready to let go of his envy. The weight of his guilt began to grow, making every step heavier as he walked away. Adetayo stood there, his heart aching. He prayed silently, not for his own success, but for Kunle to find peace. Little did he know Kunle's bitterness was about to spiral into something even darker. The day after the finals, the internet buzzed with rumors of sabotage. A leaked video recorded by Kioma went viral, showing Kunle's panicked reaction backstage during the stolen phone incident. Comments flooded in. Kunle looks guilty. Did he sabotage Adetayo? Kunle's sponsors started pulling out, and his reputation began to crumble. Kunle sat in his apartment, scrolling through the barrage of negative comments. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages, but he couldn't bring himself to answer. He felt trapped, his envy now a cage he had built around himself. I've lost everything, he thought. Then came the most unexpected call. Adetayo. Kunle hesitated but eventually answered, expecting anger or blame. Instead, Adetayo's voice was calm. Kunle, I know what you did, but I also know you're better than this. Let me help you. Kunle's throat tightened. Why? After everything I've done to you? Because this isn't who you are. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right, Adetayo replied. Later that day, at a press conference, Kunle shocked the audience by admitting his role in the sabotage. I let my jealousy get the better of me, he confessed, his voice trembling. But Adetayo showed me what grace looks like. I'm truly sorry. Adetayo stood beside him, nodding in support. It takes strength to admit your mistakes, he told the crowd. I forgive him. The room erupted into applause. The narrative had shifted. Instead of competitors, they were now seen as symbols of redemption and forgiveness. The night of the grand performance arrived, and the tension in the air was electric. The auditorium was packed, the audience eagerly awaiting the final acts. Adetayo stood backstage, his heart steady, his mind focused on delivering a message of hope. Kunle stood a few feet away, his nerves raw, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of peace. Adetayo stepped onto the stage first, his voice carrying a melody that silenced the crowd. The song was personal, a hymn about grace and second chances. As the final note hung in the air, the audience rose to their feet, cheering and clapping. Adetayo bowed, but instead of leaving, he turned to the host. I'd like to share this stage with someone who's found his way back, he said, motioning for Kunle to join him. Kunle hesitated, then walked out, the spotlight warming his skin. The crowd murmured, unsure of what to expect. The music started, a blend of Adetayo's soulful voice and Kunle's rhythmic movements. Together, they created a performance so powerful it left the audience in tears. When it ended, the applause was deafening. Kunle turned to Adetayo, his voice breaking. Thank you for forgiving me, for believing in me. Adetayo smiled. This is what grace feels like. Let's show the world what we can do together. The two walked off stage not as rivals, but as partners united by redemption and reconciliation. Months later, Adetayo and Kunle's collaboration became a national sensation, inspiring youth across Nigeria. Their music and dance project, aptly titled Second Chances, highlighted themes of forgiveness and unity. During a youth rally, they performed to a roaring crowd, their energy in perfect sync. Adetayo looked out at the audience, his heart full. Kunle leaned in and said, Thank you for showing me that grace is real. Adetayo replied, We're proof that no one has to walk this journey alone. As the crowd chanted their names, Adetayo smiled, thinking, This is just the image beginning of something greater. Yumoke's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the elaborate gel perched on her head, her reflection in the mirror staring back with a mix of confidence and doubt. She was at a prestigious wedding in Ibadan, not as a guest, but as the event planner who had orchestrated the luxurious affair. The room buzzed with praise for the decor, but in the corner of her mind a voice whispered, "What if it all falls apart?" At 32, Jumoke was a rising star in Nigeria's competitive event planning industry, known for her eye for detail and unrelenting drive. But beneath her polished exterior lay a woman battling an internal war, one fueled by years of striving for perfection to prove her worth. With a major project for Chief Olaniyan's daughter, Jumoke's career was at a crossroads. Jumoke's phone buzzed incessantly as she reviewed her vendor checklist for Chief Olaniyan's event. Uche, her assistant, rushed into the office with a worried expression. "Madam, we have a problem. Bimbo has been contacting our vendors, offering higher fees to poach them," she said, her voice trembling. Jumoke's stomach knotted. Bimbo, a rival event planner, notorious for her cutthroat tactics, had been targeting her business for months. Jumoke had dismissed the earlier attempts as petty competition, but this was different. Bimbo had successfully lured away the caterer, and rumors hinted at more defections. The situation worsened when Chief Olaniyan called, his tone icy. "Jumoke, I've been hearing unsettling things. Are you sure you can handle this event? I cannot afford any mistakes." She reassured him, but doubt crept into her voice. Later that day, an anonymous blog post surfaced online, accusing her of being unprofessional and plagiarizing event concepts. The article spread like wildfire, amplifying Chief Olaniyan's concerns. Jumoke's confidence began to crack. Even her loyal vendors seemed uneasy, subtly questioning her ability to pull off the extravagant celebration. The whispers of doubt from outside her business grew louder, mirroring the insecurities she had buried deep inside. As the external attacks mounted, Jumoke couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully built reputation was crumbling. Yet, what hurt the most wasn't just the sabotage, it was her own lingering fear that perhaps the rumors were true, that maybe she wasn't as capable as she pretended to be. The line between external enemies and internal doubts blurred, and for the first time in years, Jumoke felt paralyzed by fear. Jumoke grew up in a modest home in Elisha, the second child in a family of 4. Her mother, a seamstress, was a strict disciplinarian who believed that excellence was the only ticket out of poverty. "Perfection is survival," she would often say, hammering the mantra into Jumoke and her siblings. Her older brother Tunde was the golden child, excelling in academics and earning scholarships to prestigious schools. Jumoke, on the other hand, struggled to meet the impossibly high standards set for her. Her mother's constant comparisons to Tunde left deep scars. Every small failure, whether in school or at home, felt like confirmation that she wasn't good enough. As a teenager, Jumoke vowed to prove herself, pouring all her energy into her creative talents, particularly organizing school events. Her knack for planning grew into a passion, and years later, she started her event planning business with a vision to create beauty out of chaos. But success came at a price. Jumoke became a perfectionist, terrified of failure. She micromanaged her team, obsessing over every detail, and worked tirelessly to maintain her reputation as a flawless planner. Deep down, she feared that one misstep would unravel everything, confirming the doubts she had been running from since childhood. These insecurities became her silent enemy. She second-guessed her decisions, hesitated to delegate, and often questioned whether she truly belonged in the competitive event planning industry. Though she projected confidence, a part of her still felt like the little girl desperately seeking her mother's approval. Now, with Bimbo's sabotage and Chief Olaniyan's doubts mounting, Jumoke's internal conflict threatened to overwhelm her. Was she fighting her competitors, or was the real battle against the voice in her head whispering that she would never be enough? The morning of Chief Olaniyan's daughter's birthday dawned bright, but Jumoke felt an ominous weight in her chest as she arrived at the grand venue. She had spent weeks obsessing over every detail, determined to make this event her masterpiece. Yet, the sabotage she had been battling behind the scenes now threatened to erupt into chaos. Hours before the event, The decorator called to say they were pulling out due to non-payment. Confused and furious, Jumoke scrambled to clarify the situation, only to discover a fake email sent in her name cancelling the contract. The clock was ticking and guests were set to arrive in a few hours. She frantically called in a backup decorator, negotiating fees on the spot to salvage the setup. Just as she began to regain control, another blow hit. The caterer, whom Bimbo had unsuccessfully tried to poach, arrived late, citing traffic. However, upon inspection, half the food ordered was missing. Yumoke's stomach churned. This wasn't negligence. Someone had tampered with her arrangements. The breaking point came during the event itself. As the live band began to play, the venue's lights flickered and went out completely, plunging the space into darkness. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Chief Olanian's furious gaze locked onto Yumoke. "What is happening, Yumoke?" he demanded. She rushed backstage, discovering that the generator had been tampered with. It was a calculated move, another strike orchestrated by Bimbo to ruin her. Yumoke stood frozen, her heart racing as she faced the possibility of public humiliation and professional ruin. Guests began shifting uneasily, and whispers grew louder. For a moment, she wanted to walk away, to escape the crushing weight of her failure. But as tears stung her eyes, she realized that this wasn't just an external attack, it was a reflection of her deepest fear, that she wasn't good enough. The question loomed. Would she let her inner doubt win, or would she fight back and reclaim control? Jumoke stepped into the venue's quiet storage room, her breathing ragged as the chaos outside threatened to consume her. The voices in her head were deafening. "You're a failure. Everyone will see through you now." Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, staring at her brother Tunde's number. He was the one person she could always call when things felt impossible. "Tunde," she whispered when he picked up, her voice breaking. "I can't do this. I've messed everything up." "Yumoke," he said gently, his tone grounding her. "You're stronger than you think. The problem isn't what's happening outside, it's what you're letting it do to you. You've worked too hard to let fear and doubt win. Take control." His words hung in the air, reminding her of the determination she'd carried since childhood. For years she had fought to silence the critical voice inside her, but now she realized she didn't have to silence it, she had to face it. Her fear of failure had been her constant shadow, and it was time to confront it. She wiped her tears and walked back into the chaos, calling her team into a quick meeting. For the first time, she delegated tasks instead of trying to do everything herself. Uche was tasked with finding a backup technician to fix the generator. Another assistant was sent to oversee the caterers, ensuring the missing food would arrive quickly. As she watched her team move with precision, she realized something profound. She didn't have to carry the weight alone. Trusting herself and others was the only way to win, not just against Bimbo, but against her own doubts. Yumoke stepped onto the stage with a microphone in hand, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, I deeply apologize for the temporary inconvenience. We have a surprise acoustic performance to keep you entertained while we sort out the issue." Her calm tone and warm smile quelled the growing murmurs. She had decided to take control of the narrative instead of letting the chaos define the evening. While the band played, Jumoke's team worked behind the scenes to fix the generator. Uche, her assistant, secured a backup technician who arrived promptly and repaired the issue within the hour. The lights flickered back on, and the guests cheered. Yumoke took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of pride. However, she knew the sabotage couldn't go unaddressed. She had been too reactive, allowing her competitors to dictate her moves. Now, it was time to go on the offensive. Yumoke reached out to the venue manager and requested security footage. Within minutes, they found damning evidence, the bribed technician tampering with the generator. Confronting him, she demanded he confess who had paid him, and his shaky admission pointed directly to Bimbo. Jumoke confronted Bimbo during the event, pulling her aside to a quiet corner. "I know what you did," Jumoke said, her voice low but firm. "I have evidence of your sabotage. If you want to avoid legal action, you'll publicly retract the lies you've spread about me and my business. Bimbo tried to deny it, but Jumoke's unflinching gaze made her falter. She left the venue in a huff, her confidence visibly shaken. By the end of the night, the event was back on track, with guests marveling at the decor, food and entertainment. Jumoke realized something profound. She had faced the worst, both externally and internally, and come out stronger. She didn't need perfection. She needed trust in herself and her team. The next morning, Jumoke sat across from Chief Olaniyan in his grand office, the tension palpable. His piercing gaze met hers, and she could feel the weight of his disappointment lingering from the previous night. He gestured toward a tablet on his desk, showing a viral blog post detailing the chaos at the event, with photos uploaded by an anonymous attendee. Jumoke's name was mentioned, though the post conveniently omitted the sabotage she had endured. "Jumoke," Chief Olaniyan said, his tone measured, "why should I trust you again after this?" Jumoke took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "Sir, I take full responsibility for what happened last night, but I need you to know the truth." She laid out the evidence, the tampered generator, the false email, and the testimony from the technician, all leading back to Bimbo's calculated sabotage. Chief Olaniyan's expression shifted, the lines of anger softening into contemplation. "And what about the blog post?" he asked. "The damage is done." "That's why I'm here," Jumoke replied. "I've already reached out to my legal team, who are drafting a response to address the false claims. Additionally, I've secured a PR firm to manage the narrative and ensure your event's success is what people remember." As they spoke, a commotion outside drew their attention. Bimbo had arrived uninvited, flanked by two journalists. She feigned innocence, loudly accusing Jumoke of incompetence, but her bravado crumbled when the venue manager appeared with security footage of her sabotaging the event. Chief Olaniyan rose, his voice commanding, "Get her out of my sight. Jumoke, you've proven your mettle. I underestimated you." He extended his hand. "Let's talk about your exclusive contract moving forward." Jumoke smiled, relief washing over her. She had faced her adversaries, both external and internal, and emerged victorious. Jumoke walked into her office a week later, the air lighter than it had been in months. The exclusive contract with Chief Olaniyan was signed, securing her business for the foreseeable future. More importantly, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just for salvaging the event, but for overcoming the fear that had held her back for so long. She gathered her team in the conference room, acknowledging each member's contributions during the crisis. "I've learned that I don't have to carry everything on my own," she admitted, her voice steady. "Together, we can face any challenge." In the following weeks, Jumoke made changes to her business. She delegated more responsibilities, hired additional staff, and set boundaries for herself to avoid burnout. She also began therapy, finally addressing the deep-seated insecurities that had plagued her since childhood. At home, she mended her relationship with her mother, explaining how her comparisons had shaped her fears. To her surprise, her mother apologized, acknowledging the unintended impact of her words. It was a moment of healing Jumoke never thought possible. Thank you for watching. Before you go, be sure to check out my other videos for more amazing stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below about what you think of this story. See you in the next video.